የምስጥራዊ ማህበረሰብ ሲያጠፉ ጥቁሩን ህብረተሰብ እየተባለ ነው የሚገርመው ነገር እኮ ጥቁሩን ህብረተሰብ ለማጥፋት ሲዘጋጁልን የሚሰሩትም ከራሳችን ጥቁር ባለስልጣኖች ጋር እኮ ያው ይሄን ህዝብ በዚህ በኩል ባለው ላይ እንዲደረግ አንተ ደግሞ በዚህ በኩል ያለው እንደዚህ ያደርግ ይባል እሺ ያደርጋል ምን ያህል ይከፈለኛል ይሄን ያህል ሚሊዮን ብር ይገባላል በአካውንት ቤት ይገዛላል እንዲደረግልሃል ሲያስቡት እንግዲህ ህዝቡን ካጠፉት በኋላ ማን ይቀራል ባለስልጣኖቻችን ይቀራሉ ማለት ነው ይሆናል ማለት አይደለም ግን እቅዱም ማለት ነው አሁን እነሱንም እኮ የሚያጠፋ ነገር ነው አሁን እነሱ የሚሰሩላቸውን እነሱንም ነው የሚያጠፋቸው እኮ አይፈልጉ እነሱንም ራሳቸው አይፈልጉ ይደመስዋቸዋል መጨረሻ ላይ የቤት ስራ በእነሱ ይሰራሉ አንተ ይሄን ሀገር ያዝ አንተ ይሄን ከተማ ያዝ አንተ ደግሞ ይሄን ህዝብ ያዝ አንተ ሀብታሙን ያዝ አንተ ደግሞ ደሃውን ያዝ አንተ ደግሞ በመድኃኒት ያለውን ህዝብ ያዝ አንተ ደግሞ ሆስፒታል የወደቀውን ተስፋ የቆረጠውን ያዝ ተብሎ ይመዳደባል ከዛ ይሄን እርጭበት ይሄን አድርገው ይሄን ከዛ ይደመሳሉ ይሄን ግብ አድርገናል በጣም ጥሩ ጭብጨባ ይደረጋል ቢሮ እንትን ስብሰባ አዳራሽ ከዛስ ይሄን ያህል ህዝብ መተናል ይሄን ያህል ህዝብ ወድቋል ከዚህ ሚሊዮን ህዝብ ይሄን ያህል ተቀንሷል ይሄን ያህል ህዝብ ይሞታል ብለን እንጠብቃለን ተብሎ
Fertility rates have crashed as countries industrialize and develop. The world population is now expected to balance out at around 11 billion by the end of the century. But the big picture conceals the details. Let's look at one region in particular, Sub-Saharan Africa. In 2019, it was home to 1 billion people living in 46 countries. Although its growth rate has slowed down in the last few decades, it's still much higher than in the rest of the world, with up to 5 billion by 2100. Such growth would be a huge challenge for any society. But Sub-Saharan Africa is also the poorest region on
4 billion, which is projected to be the population of Africa at the end of this century, and that's basically going to be half the planet. Half the planet will be African, and that's a huge change because if you go back just 100 years, the population of the British Isles and the population of British West Africa were more or less exactly the same. People don't quite grasp the difference in scale in what's happened in Africa.
I think there's another way of putting it which might resonate with people, which is if you go back to 1950, there were 2 Europeans for every sub-Saharan African. And by the end of this century, there are going to be 6 or 7 sub-Saharan Africans for every European. And I think that is going to change the world. Now,
the population of Africa is set to almost double by 2050. So what can be done to ensure that poverty doesn't increase? And how can a disproportionately large youth population help drive progress? With me to discuss all of this and more is Bill Gates. Bill, are we at a turning point where regression is a real risk?
It's really Africa that still has a doubling in population to 2050 and probably another doubling to 2100, where you really have to do a good job if you're trying to get these extreme poverty rates down. So if we don't do better in investing in human capital in Africa, yes, the number of people in extreme poverty is actually going to go up.
Should the solution, or should more solutions be focused on slowing that growth? So for example, increasing reproductive rights for women or spreading the access to contraceptives, because it seems that, is it correct that no amount of investment can really keep pace with that population growth?
Population collapse is already here.
All of the globalized connections and consumptions that create the world we know, we are at the end of it.
In the US, birth rates have fallen to record lows, with under 1.6 children born per adult woman. In the UK, it's even lower at under 1.5 children. It's not just an isolated problem for the West either. Across the world, developed countries are falling apart under the weight of their own aging populations. As fewer and fewer children are born, the millions of people entering retirement put even more pressure on the rest of the country. And it seems the Western world is in for an incoming population crisis. So what happens when the population eventually collapses? And how did this situation ever get so out of control? Why are people like Elon Musk desperately panicking about the collapse of the population?
People have no idea how fast the population is going to collapse. You know, basically civilization will die with a whimper and adult diapers.
Well, let's take a peek at what lies ahead for the Western world's future when the population becomes old and countries start shrinking up. Now, lots of people